This is James Phinney Baxter. We've got him to thank for the Western Prom, the Eastern Prom, and of course Baxter Boulevard. And he spent the whole first half of his life making money and gaining power, and then he spent the second half spending both those things for the public good. He was born March 23rd, 1831 in Gorham. He was the youngest of 6 kids. He loved animals and he loved to read. After he finished school in Portland, he borrowed money from his family and started a wholesale dry goods company. And when the business took off, he married Sarah Kimball Lewis in 1854, and they set about starting a family. In the early 1860s, canning was a new technology, and James Phinney Baxter got in on the ground floor. He opened his first lobster canning operation on Deer Isle in 1862. Before long, he was selling canned corn, beans, and tomatoes to the Union Army during the Civil War, and boy, didn't he make money doing that. But in January 1872, his wife died, giving birth to their 7th child. Then his only daughter Dolly died too after falling from her high chair. At the height of his business success, his life was in ruins. But that changed in 1873 when he married a young widow named Mehetable Cummings Proctor Perkins. They had 3 more kids together, and he bought a big house on Deering Street where they all could live together. He used to sit right here. Now it's a parking lot, so yay urban renewal. Anyway, that year he turned 48 and he took his first vacation ever. And then with his family and his fortune secure, he set about making his mark in civic life. He wrote history books, he composed bad poetry. He published a 700-page book explaining his theory that Francis Bacon wrote Shakespeare's plays. In 1889, he bought and paid for Portland's first public library building right here on Congress Street. Before that, Portland's meager collection of books had lived in a few shabby rooms at City Hall. Then, in 1892, at the age of 61, Baxter became mayor of Portland. He won re-election 5 times, but he was also defeated twice too, once by his own Republican Party in a primary. Under his leadership, Portland expanded the Western and the Eastern Proms, and he hired the famous Olmsted Brothers design firm on his own dime to create a master plan for the city's parks. Now, they were the men behind Manhattan's Central Park, and their plan included improvements to Deering Oaks and construction of a new tree-lined boulevard all the way around Back Cove. For years to come, Baxter cajoled and he bullied landowners all around the cove to sell or donate their land to his pet project. And city engineers stabilized the shore, they built a walking path, and they installed ornate bridges. And finally, in 1917, the boulevard was complete, and a few years later, the city named it after Baxter himself. He died at the age of 90 on May 8, 1921. The funeral took place at his house on Deering Street, and one of the pallbearers was the governor of Maine. Now that governor was, of course, his son, Percival Baxter. And 10 years later, the younger Baxter gave Mount Katahdin to the people of Maine. But by then, that kind of generosity was just a family tradition.